Good morning, Scotty. We're just going to wait a minute or so before everybody gets on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Happy day to everybody out there. I appreciate you taking the time to come and take a look at what we're doing here at Kin. So this is Technical Tuesday for Kin North America, and it was kind of, we put things off from last week because we had Labor Day weekend and the start of school and so on and so forth going on. So we moved our Technical Tuesday 1 week out. So that's probably why everybody's going, what the heck's going on? Where did this come from? And et cetera, et cetera. So what we wanted to talk about today is to keep it really simple and to keep it really light. We're going to talk about fall color topics, not necessarily trends, but topics and some of the things that we're hearing on social media and questions that we're getting asked. I want to make sure and answer them here because they're very timely with what's going on with the season at the same time. So the two of them just happen to be colliding with each other simultaneously. So some of the topics we'll talk about today: natural redheads, great coverage for just a second. We're going to talk some high lifts, and we're also going to talk about prepping the canvas. So let me just start off by working with prepping the canvas. We are in an interesting time now, coming into from one season to the next, from summer into fall, in that we've had a lot of dryness going on and all the water tables have been lowered. And in a lot of areas, we've switched from being public water to being the co-opt well water. And, you know, they move your water sources around based off of whatever the needs are. The challenge with that comes in, our clients bathe in this, and it becomes an issue when we're prepping the canvas for the hair. We want to make sure that we take care of all of the minerals and all of the buildup that are happening on the hair. And it's going to be higher now because the water table has lowered just a little bit. So the mineral content is even higher. So we're getting reports of a couple of different things, where foil swelling, of hair, not lifting. That's really a huge issue for it. And when you have mineral buildup on the hair, that's going to be a huge issue for that. We're getting some reports about the lightener as well, and I wanted to talk about that for just a second. So a couple of key things to keep in mind when you're prepping the canvas. I'll give you a little helpful hint from Heloise, the hairdresser. If you use your deep cleanse shampoo from Kin, which has a high pH, there's an ingredient in it called EDTA. And EDTA, when it's mixed with citric acid and L-ascorbic acid or vitamin C powder, actually becomes a demineralizer very easily. So here's a really simple solve that'll help a lot of you that are out there. And you can go to the grocery store and get this. You don't need to invest in really expensive treatments. There is some that are out there on the market. Our friends over at Malibu make an incredible one. But if that's not really something that's doable for you, Fruit Fresh from your local grocery store works really, really well. If you mix a tablespoon of Fruit Fresh and a tablespoon of water, plus a tablespoon of Deep Remove shampoo, apply it on the hair, put the guest underneath the dryer for 10 to 15 minutes with a bag under a warm dryer. It causes all those mineral scales to just fall off the hair, allowing it to be prepped in a beautiful way so that you can take care of that. And that's even something you can have your guests do at home if necessary, if you're looking to save some time on prepping the hair. So right now, prepping the hair is vitally important for color. Just to get a fresh start moving into fall, I'd highly suggest that you get that fresh start moving right into fall. Hello. Hi, Judy. Hi, Gary. Hi, Linda. Well, thanks for joining. So prepping right now has been vitally more important than it ever has, just because of the season change of what's going on. So if you're experiencing lack of gray coverage, you're experiencing challenges with lift, specifically when you're talking about lightener, you're probably having issues with some sort of mineral buildup on the hair. It's a really simple and easy solve for the client. Oh, perfect. And they'll be adding the recipes to the files later today. I appreciate that. That's vitally important. But one other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly is lightener for just a second. So for those of you that don't know, our lightener, in case you haven't used it, our lightener, our Kin Blonde powder, is extremely gentle on the hair. So one of the things that you want to make sure that you do is a couple of little tricks, because I've heard some people say, hey, it's not lifting. One, we're talking about mineral deposit. Two is when you get your kin lightener, you want to make sure and take the bag a couple times a day and massage the bag, because the components that actually cause it to thicken way more than the ammonium persulfate. So they'll have a tendency to settle out in shipping. So you want to make sure you give the bag a good massage, roll it around a couple of times, make sure everything's mixed up. Just make it a habit of mixing things up so that you get the right proportions of lightener to thickener up to ammonium persulfate in your mixture. Number two is please use your mixing ratios. Kin Blonde is mixed 2 parts of developer to 1 part of lightener. So the scoop is 25 grams of lightener. So you want to put in about 50 grams or 50 mils of regular developer into your bowl. The mixing ratio is vitally important. And I'm running into a lot of hairdressers that were trained in cosmetology school to mix to consistency. That's when we used to use basic white 4 million years ago, and nobody uses that anymore. The problem is we have where the challenge comes in, we have wheat starch and we have collagen built into the product. So what happens is it's the gravy complex. You're going to mix it up at your color bar and you're going to feel like it's too thin in consistency. And then you're going to adjust accordingly. And the wheat starch and the collagen act like thickeners, just like your gravy. So we all put cornstarch into our gravy to thicken it up. It does the same concept. So I promise Scout's Honor, if you mix the Kin Blonde appropriately in a 2-to-1 ratio, by the time you get back to your station, it's going to be the perfect consistency you need every single time. I promise. It takes maybe 3 to 5 seconds for it to happen. And what's happening is we're getting people that are getting too high of a ratio of developer to bleach, and what's ending up happening is it's compromising their lift, because you need the perfect proportion of ammonium persulfate to hydrogen peroxide to create that lift, and that's the 2-to-1 ratio. There's a reason why the manufacturers give you the ratios that they're giving you. So vitally important. So you want to make sure that you're mixing it in the right way. So that was just a couple of different things. So let's continue on that vein of talking about bleaching for just a second. We had some questions this week about bleaching redheads and some of the challenges that come with redheads, because it's that time of season where clients are still wanting to experience blonde, but we're wanting a dialed back version of blonde. So I wanted to talk about redheads for just a second. So there's redheads by choice and there's redheads by nature. So let's talk about redheads by choice for just a second. In making the transition into our color brand, one of the challenges that I hear a lot of colorists say is they're really trepidatious about reds, because reds are where the biggest amount of variations on a theme happen with hair color. And most hair color lines, and I find this happens a lot more in Italian lines than anything else, is you'll have your brown series and you have your, oh my God, obnoxious red series. And you play this little dance of how do I mix the two of these to get a believable soft red? Well, in Kinland, we have a lot of options for you. One of the categories that seems to be overlooked for that natural, believable redhead who wants what she had when she was younger is the 3-4 series in Kinessences. The 3-4 series is a golden copper. I find a lot of natural redheads want what they had when they were younger, and we have a tendency to creep over to the 4-3 series, which is a copper gold. Let me just put it to you like this. So it's copper gold series. I have found in my personal experience that the 3-4 series right there is going to be a much better choice for me. And it's gold on its way to being copper rather than being obnoxiously copper. So it's a great little way, as well as the 5-3 series is a really great way to be able to create that soft red on its way to being red. So keep in mind a couple of different things. What causes a natural redhead to be a redhead is their pheomelanin color molecule is actually a hybrid. It's called trichosiderine. Trichosiderine color molecules have a high content of copper and iron built into them. So if you look at a natural redhead and you look at her close to the scalp, you're actually going to see that hair looks kind of yellow-green. And the reason that that is like that is because that when we're talking about copper, copper oxidizes green. That's that little bit of copper that's oxidized. Where the red comes into place on the mid-lengths and ends is as it ages, that's where the iron oxidation comes into place, and that's why we see more red representation. So with a natural redhead, a lot of times we have a challenge with the fact that we want to make them one color scalp to ends, and they pull it, we pull out that 7-4-3 swatch, we make them 7-4-3 scalp to ends, they're going to look artificial. So you want to make sure you do a deeper and cooler color at the scalp, lighter and brighter and warmer on the mid-lengths and ends. One of my personal favorites for highlighting natural redheads that keeps them looking a little bit softer is our new Earth Nudes 8.348, which is a level 8 gold soft hint of copper, and it has a slight bit of green in it just to keep it from being too obnoxiously over the top. It's absolutely beautiful when you're lifting with the hair, and it's very controlled. I think we shy away from it because it's, it's gold and copper, green. It sounds kind of obnoxious, but when you put it on the hair, it's absolutely stunningly beautiful in the way that it works. So just plug that into the back of your brain. You can do that prep formula that we were talking about, demineralizing. You can do that same prep formula on a natural redhead if you're looking to go lighter with the hair, because it does have a tendency to break down the color molecule and the minerals that are in the color molecule so that it can lighten a lot easier. So that would be one thing that I would suggest. When we're talking about redheads by choice or redheads by nature, keep in mind less is more and less shifts and kin for the win every single time. Now, that takes me to my next subject, which was high lift tints and prepping. Moving into fall, one of the challenges that we have is, especially when we're having an Indian summer, sorry, I'm talking really fast. Especially when we have an Indian summer coming on like this, clients want to stay blonde longer because things are warmer. So I highly suggest that you integrate a high lift tint as a secondary tone into your foils and foliage. Now, I say that, and I say that to a room of hairdressers. I'll have 50 hairdressers in a room. 25 will say yes, 25 will say no, because they've had negative experiences or they've had positive experiences. So let's talk about high lift tint and how to select it for the right guest for just a second. So if you go back to any of our previous videos where we talked about natural hair color categories, there's only 4 hair color categories in the world: warm browns, blackish browns, soft browns, and reds, natural reds. Well, we'll throw out the redheads for just a second. The B category person was born with very dark hair, and she stayed dark well into her age. That's an easy one. The W category person was born blonde, and she changed before she turned into puberty. And then the S category person was also born blonde, but she stayed blonde well into her adulthood. Now, the W category and the S category actually have a level 6 that crosses over. They both have a level 6. So if you have a level 6 sitting in front of you, they're going to look exactly the same. If you apply high lift tint, and most high lift tint manufacturers are designed to lift up to 4 levels, possibly 5 if you're talking about fine hair. And they'll all say, it lifts a level 6 to a pale platinum, and it's magic, and it's going to be pale, and there'll be no warmth whatsoever. And we've all been disappointed by them, or we've had incredible success. So the first caveat to understand is a high lift tint is never going to lift you to that 11, 12, 13 clear. You need to overlift. In order to overcome warmth, you need to overlift and deposit back down. High lift tint only takes you to that level. So your reflection is going to be warm no matter what you do. It's about your tolerance for warmth and how you can dial it back. Now, don't let the word warm throw you. When we talk about gold hair color, we confuse it a lot with underlying pigment gold from bleached hair. The two are not the same. They are two totally different things. So you want to make sure that you think in terms of an artificial gold, which is going to have a nice refined soft finish to it, versus a bleached out gold, which is not going to have a refined finish to it. So with that being said, know that you're only going to get to that really yellow stage in the hair, and you're going to control that warmth. High lift tints have about 4 times as much pigment or toning power as a traditional toner would have. So it's very controlled in how it lifts, but it has to go on the right person. So we mentioned that there was a level 6 in the W category and a level 6 in the S category. And you have to ask the question to them. When you were a child, what color hair were you born with? What color did your hair turn how old were you when it darkened? And what color did it turn when you went out into the sun? Vitally, vitally important. The W category person is going to say, I was born blonde. I darkened before I hit puberty. And she's going to say, when I went out into the sun, it turned red, it turned gold. I got highlights and lots of warmth to the hair color. The S category person was born blonde. She stayed blonde well into adulthood. They'll usually say, I started getting darker as I had kids, which has nothing to do with anything, but it just seems the correlation. Started getting darker as I had kids, and when I was a child and I went out in the sun, I got blonder. She's the one that high lift tint is successful on. The W category, level 6, it will not be successful on. So you have to ask that question. If you have both of them sitting in front of you at the same time as a level 6, they're going to look exactly the same. You won't be able to identify the difference just based off of looking at them. You're going to have to ask the question. So using high lift tint as a secondary reflection in fall blondes just dials back the tonality a little bit. Now, again, we have a tendency to get concerned about warmth in the hair color because we confuse warmth in the hair color with that brassy result that we get from lightening with lightener. But a lot of times when you've blown apart the blonde through the summer, or she's been lightened from the elements or whatever the case is, by adding that secondary reflection of gold just behind that really pale blonde. So you're still going to retouch a pale blonde and put in a high lift tint and just alternate the two of them throughout. What you're going to find you're going to get is the gold causes the blonde to be blonder, and it has a tendency to cause it to be more pure. What causes brightness is not ash. What causes brightness is gold. That doesn't mean turn her whole head gold. That just means give her glimmers of gold throughout the hair, aka tinsel, and it's going to cause brightness. We have a tendency to dull everything down because we're so afraid of warmth. Anytime you add blue to something, it darkens and dominates. So you're going to find you're going to get a light, bright result, but it's a little bit more dialed back, but it still has a lot of brightness and reflection to the hair. And then as we move later into fall, just before, when they get their retouch just before the holidays, that's when we want to really start putting forward a low light into the hair, doing some sort of a root stretch on the hair between the foils so that we get a little bit more low light and intensity to the hair. Caveat on that. When we're taking a look, one of the things to keep in mind is with Kinessence's color, because it is an oil delivery system, we don't have to repigmentize the hair as much as we would with our traditional ammoniated colors, because it does penetrate all the way into the cortex, into the medulla of the hair shaft. So, personal favorite for doing low lights in the hair in between foils, especially if you're going to do a deposit only, is this beautiful 02 series. It's a neutral iridescent, and I hate to use the word, but it creates the perfect dirty blonde in the hair so that it's not too warm, it's not too cool. You know, if you use a neutral, it can have a tendency to be a little bit flat. If you have a tendency to use ash, it's super flat, and the porosity becomes a huge issue for you. So just as a suggestion, it's a great way to be able to add a little bit of low light and do a root shadow or a root stretch in between those foils and just dial the blonde back down even a little bit further as we progress deeper into fall, just before we transition into winter. The fun part about that is if you stick to doing it as a demi-permanent hair color, come spring when they change their mind, you can lighten through it moderately well without very little effort to it. So be thinking with your guests as you work, be thinking about not landlocking yourself into any service. It's not a matter of if they change their mind, it's a matter of when they change their mind. And especially with blondes, you want to go through that cycle with them and give them something to look forward to from visit to visit to visit to visit. So you would plant that seed on this visit. We'd say, hey, on the next visit, why don't we introduce some low lights in the hair, and choose your words very carefully. You can't unsee the picture. Once the bell is rung, you cannot unring it. Please don't say to them, let's put some darker pieces through your hair. Way to freak out a blonde. So you're going to have to pick, we want to add some richness, we want to add some depth. In the way that we want to do that is we're going to put some depth behind your blonde. So you're still blonde. We just want to give it a little bit more value and give it a little more dimension that's specific to the hair. So stop trying to destroy the hair. So with that being said, the last piece that I wanted to share with you guys was just a quick conversation about gray coverage for just a second. And we all know gray coverage. When we talk about gray coverage, Kin does an absolutely beautiful job with gray coverage, but as most hair color manufacturers do, we have a tendency to focus on the neutrals as gray coverage, and there's a whole crayon box that we're missing, and I wanted to draw your attention to it. So I'm going to use Prestige as an example because it has the best color wheel on here. So I'm hopefully you can see this. I'm going to bring it really close to my camera. Yeah, for a second. So I'll hold this right there we go. One of the first things that I like to tell people is in Prestige, we have over 120 colors. I mean, it's like the 64 count box of crayons as a kid. It should make you salivate. Now, obviously, as a booth renter, sometimes that's going to be an issue for you, but I wanted to share with you some ideas and some concepts. The first thing is always make sure when you're choosing your colors that you take a look at the color wheel. The closer the color is placed to the center of the color wheel, the more background or gray coverage intended the color is going to be. The closer it is to the edge of the color wheel, the more pure tone or fashion shade oriented the color is going to be. If I'm doing bright freaking screaming red, I don't want brown involved in my formula, so I'm going to want to choose one of those reds that lives on the exterior of the hair. For gray coverage, I want to work with those colors that are a little bit closer to the center. So if you look dead center in the color wheel, you're going to notice for Prestige, there's actually four, count them, 4 different options for gray coverage. And I want to clear up some misconceptions for just a second. If you've ever heard somebody say, does your neutrals run warm or do they run cool? In a lot of manufacturers, you'll see that their neutrals will run warm, or they'll run red, or they pull, you hear they pull a little bit of red, or they run really ashy and flat and matte. Schwarzkopf's a great example of that. It's very opaque and it's very cool in its result. So what Kin has done in their brilliance is they've actually designed 4 different hair color categories for you for gray coverage. So the first category is going to be your 0.0 category. Actually, I'll leave it on here. The 0.0 category is a brown, yellow, gray. So it's going to cover gray really well. It's got a little bit of gold reflection to it, but that gray just gives it a little bit more depth to it. Okay, so that's kind of our default brain is the 0.0 series. Now, for some of you out there, especially if you're coloring clients that live in the B category, that's not going to work for you. Or if you're covering really heavily gray-haired clients, that's not going to work for you. So the 0.00 series is a brown, red, gray. So anytime you have an extremely high preponderance of gray hair, you actually need more warmth in the color to get coverage, not less, because you need that coverage, especially with that red category. So think of that warmth as glue to the hair. So you're going to get a better coverage and you're going to get a bit more reflection. Now, what's fun about that is if you're doing gray coverage on a redhead, I need my neutral background to be warm. I need it to be red. So the 0.00 series makes sense for somebody in that category. So our category or a W category person is going to benefit really well from the 0.00 series. Then you'll see the CN 0.0 series, the cool neutral series, which is going to have a brown, blue, violet background to it, which is going to be insanely incredible for those clients that are shy away from warmth, especially if you have those clients that live in the B category. The B category clients, one, they're used to opaque coverage and they want a cool result. They don't want any warmth to it whatsoever. So it's not about just controlling warmth. They actually want the reflection back to be slightly cool. So that's what the CN.0 series is for. The CN.00 series is a blue-green brown base. So it's even a step cooler past that series for the extreme client who's seriously concerned about red in the hair whatsoever and actually wants a little bit of a cool gray coverage reflection back to them. So you have your choice of how you want to play. Now, the fun part about that is these are different backgrounds that you can use with the rest of the color family to get more colorful. So you can change your background, and instead of just being stuck with one neutral category, you have 4 different options that can enhance the result for you. Now, with that being said, you'll also notice right on the exterior of the ring, on the inside, anything that's inside the circle covers gray. So you'll see 0.5, 0.34, 0.53, 0.51, 0.52, 0.50, all live in that category. Those are what I call the ish categories. They're brown-ish. They cover up to 70% gray hair on their own. So I want to say that again. Anything with a 0.5 series in it will cover up to 70% gray on its own. So this is a really great option if you wanted to get away from the neutral series and you have some other colorful options. And then there's a lot of colorful options. So when you take a look at, in the swatch book, everything that's in the mahoganies and the brown categories over here, it's going to cover up to 70% gray on its own. So you have a much more colorful palette that you can begin to be using. Then you'll see right outside the line, there's going to be some colors that live out there as too. So inside the line, 70%. Outside the line, now it'll cover up to 50%. So you'll see 3.2 and 3.1 live right there. They cover up to 50% gray on their own without ever adding any background to them. That's insanely incredible and gives you a lot more creative options for gray coverage. The bulk of the clients that we work with are not 80, 90, 100% gray. By the time the client gets there, usually their budget won't allow them to continue the maintenance and they're looking to go gray. It's not that we don't have them, it's just they're the exception to the rule. The bulk of the gray coverage that we're doing is somewhere around 40 to 60, possibly on up to 70% gray coverage. So it gives you a lot more creativity for what we do every single day in the salon. Now take it a step further, and when we talk about adding Kinessences to the mix, same name and number system, Kinessences on its own, because of the oil delivery system, the colors cover up to 70% gray on their own without ever adding. So what's interesting about that is if I come in here, and I'm going to say it out loud and grab 7.44, there we go, copper, copper. It's going to cover 100%. It's going to be bold and vibrant, but it's going to cover 100%. You may need to add some background to it if you want to dial it back to have it look more like the swatch. But I guarantee you, because of the oil delivery system, it's going to cover, which that means then we don't have to add quite as much neutral into our family, and the rules don't apply quite the same with Kinessences, and we can have a little more creativity and flex because of the unique nature of the two of those. So just something to ponder and process as you're deciding, especially moving into fall, where we want our guests to experience some more interesting color and interesting warmth. I want to introduce warmth to the hair because it's fall, but I'm not looking to make them a redhead. I want to introduce warmth, but I'm not trying to make them too cool at the same time. So I just wanted to share some of those thoughts with you as well. The last piece that I'll leave, and then we'll jump off. And I see there's some questions. I'll make sure and come back and answer the questions as we go through. Is if you're doing gray coverage on a guest, and we are doing, 4N, 5N, 6N, those are always kind of the classic, 7N. That's the range that seems to be the hugest range, and 20 volume. And you're getting a little bit bored with your guests. So here's a trick that I like to use that works really, really well. And I wish my best friend Mary is my muse, and she gets gray coverage, and then we put in highlights every now and then. And I don't know about you guys, but bleach always leaves the hair just looking a little rough, and it's never quite as refined looking as colored hair. So what I have found is about every fourth visit or so, I'll introduce some high lift tint foils on her. We vacillate between a 5 and a 6 on her. And what I'll do is I'll use high lift tint. 12-1 is a really great example, which is a level 12 ash. So just so you guys know, the 11s lift up to 4 levels, the 12s lift up to 5 levels, and you can mix them in a 2-to-1 ratio. They process for 45 minutes traditionally on the scalp, 60 minutes for coarse hair. So the trick between the 4 and the 5 levels of lift is the 12 series will give up to 5 levels of lift. The 11 series will give up to 4. Is going to be texture. So we talked about those level 6s being where that turning point is going to be on things. The other caveat that makes high lift tint successful is the texture of the hair. If she's got finer hair, it's going to be easier to lift. If she's got coarser hair, it's going to be harder to lift. So just plug that into the back of your brain. On Mary, she's a previously colored level 5, 6, somewhere in between. We vacillate back and forth. So what I like to do is I take high lift tint, 12-1, and I mix it, and I bend the rules. I mix it in a 1-to-1 ratio with 40 volume. And I put in a pea size of our blue intensifier inside of it. Now, we all believe that color doesn't remove color. Color doesn't remove color predictably. But if I know, and I've been the one doing her color, and I know how it's been layered on, I know I'm going to get, at least at a minimum, I'm going to get a consistent lift because I've been doing the color and consistent about it. So I feel confident being able to do this on her hair. And I know at a minimum, I'm at least going to get 2 levels of lift, possibly 3 levels of lift out of it. So what that does for me is that 40 volume mixed with the high lift tint and the ammonia just shifts out enough of that old pigment and puts in that layer of cool result right over the top of it. And it's all done in one shot, and I don't have to tone her hair and worry about fadage and blowing the hair apart. And it just gives a secondary dimension to that brown hair, and it's not her mama's color anymore. And it just, she gets compliments left and right on her hair color. So I wanted to share that with you and give you some ideas for over previously colored hair. Now, don't take my word for it. Do all of this, test it on swatches. I highly recommend the Rinbull swatches. Color some with some previously colored hair, and then try to lift it out using high lift tint so you can kind of see where you're going to get. Obviously, the darker the color is going to be, the less lift is going to be able to get out of it, because we're talking about shifting artificial pigment. But I find I can usually get at least 2, possibly 3 levels of lift out of guests that I've been working on. So that's one. A last tidbit, and then I'll leave you on your own. If you're working with guests who have been coloring their own hair really dark, or they've come to you from another hairdresser, and I had this happen the other day, and I shared it with some of my staff, and it always seems to blow people out of the water. Had a guest come in that she was doing gray coverage, and she would do her own color every second or third. It was very difficult for her to get into her hairdresser. So she had been doing it, and she was getting this color buildup on the mid-lengths and ends of the hair. And she was sporting probably somewhere between a 4 and a 5. It depends upon what color she was using at the scalp, and that's where she'd like to live at. But the ends had gotten inky to about a level 3. So what I love to do is apply, instead of lightening those mid-lengths and ends with lightener, is apply my retouch just like I normally would, and then take the M33 and mix it with 30 volume and run it through that inky dark hair and process it the whole time all together. What happens is that M33 has enough ammonia in it with developer and 30 volume that it's going to push out some of that old artificial pigment, but it also develops and oxidizes a whole bunch of yellow back into the hair. She's so dark, I mean, I'm not removing much of that dark, but by drowning it with yellow, it causes brightness and reflection and causes it to look a good level, possibly a level and a half to 2 lighter from where it's currently at. And I haven't really lightened anything, and the quality of the hair and the shine and reflection is there. So it's a one-shot wonder that works really, really well. So we spent about 30 minutes together. I've given you lots of ideas on fall hair color trends and topics and ideas. Please, please, please hit me back with anything that you want to hear. If you haven't had a chance yet to try Restore in our newest family, I highly recommend it. Restore is the bomb. As far as the treatment is concerned in the salon, it works really, really well. And it retails really, really well. There's 4 products. Go back and watch our Restore live that we had. Take a look at our Restore video, product knowledge video as well. And if you're not doing the Restore treatments on your guest, get out and get that stuff. You're just the best 15 minutes of your life. It's going to literally restore the hair. And if you haven't also tried California Mango, our newest addition to our family, you want to make sure you add California Mango, especially as we're moving into the holiday season. It's a great way to capture those Bath and Body Works budget from our guests. And here's a simple suggestion for you. Put the hand soap in the bathroom that you're going to get, because they make a hand soap and then they make a body wash as well. So put the hand soap in the bathroom, put your large size lotion out on your station, and while your client's processing, you're just going to want to pump some hand lotion out and put it on their hands and let them do it. And I promise you, every woman, and I love it, and the smell, and next thing you know, you have a sale. And the same thing happens with the hand wash in the bathroom. They come out and say they want the body wash. So it's a really easy, quick way to garner some retail sales and just boost your dollars, especially moving into the holiday season. So I hope that helps. I appreciate everybody's time and energy and commitment. And we can know that you have options when it comes to hair color. And we really appreciate the fact that you choose to play in our world. And we look forward to working with you and servicing you. Have a great day.